Hi everybody, I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching The Sit Down. Talking music today. Caroline Jones here in the house. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Really nice to meet you. Congratulations on everything going on right now.
Thank you so much.
So what's it been like building this whole thing out? Because you've been doing the whole music thing for a really long time and your stuff's starting to hit. You're doing Fallon, you know, like things are happening for you. So what's it all been like?
Yeah, it's a really exciting time in my life and in my career. I mean, I've been, like you said, I've been playing music since I was young, and I've been pursuing music professionally for almost a decade now. So it's been a really beautiful journey and a really organic journey because of the way that we've been building it and the headliners that have kind of taken me under their wing in the past few years. So I've gotten to build a fan base touring and so it's a beautiful thing. It's a great journey.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So why don't we wind it all the way back?
Yeah.
Take me back to being a kid in Connecticut, starting to get into the music world, because you played like a bunch of different instruments growing up, right?
Yeah, I actually started out writing. I was big into poetry and short stories and words as a child, and when I started singing lessons, I begged my parents for singing lessons, and when I realized I could put all those words and those poems and those stories to music, and after that I never wanted to do anything else. But it wasn't until I was in my late teens, early 20s that I really started to pick up instruments and get interested in production, because I'd been writing songs for a while, but you have so much more creative freedom when you play instruments, and especially when I got interested, I first went down to Nashville and worked with Mac McAnally and saw how the session players and the producers create records down there, and I was fascinated by the arranging process and the production process, and I would hear parts in my head and I wanted to implement them myself. You know, I wanted to know what the guitar player was doing and what the drummer was doing and how you get that sound and what kind of mic that is, and I was just fascinated by the whole process and saw how creatively deep you can go if you have a knowledge base. And so I started picking up instruments and trying to learn more about how I could bring those parts to life myself. And yeah, and it's just been a journey ever since then. I mean, I'm interested in so many different aspects of my craft.
I think that's really cool.
From songwriting to production to the visual aspect and everything.
Absolutely. So what were the differences between writing poems and writing songs? What were some of the challenges as you started to make that crossover?
It's a really natural evolution for me because I just kept discovering more kinds of music that I loved. So I grew up listening to a lot of classic rock and R&B and reading a lot of romantic poetry and the romance poets. And then when I discovered singer-songwriter music like Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell, and that was super stream of consciousness lyrically, and even melodically, you know, it doesn't necessarily follow like a traditional song structure, or folk music kind of created their own structure of just verse, 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 which is very based around stories and storytelling and those epic poems, which is actually very similar to poetry. But then when I discovered country music, that has its own format and its own kind of songwriting rules. And I wouldn't say that I adhere to them as much as I just tried to emulate the music that I was falling in love with, you know, like Willie Nelson and Hank Williams and Vince Gill and Emmylou Harris, and you know, they have some of the best songs ever. So I think just by admiring that kind of music and then listening to it, it just naturally started to rub off on me as a songwriter. So I think I learned more about songwriting as in different forms just from being a fan than anything, because I've never really been a believer in adhering to a certain structure or style just for the sake of it, you know?
Yeah, and you don't want to do that necessarily, because I think it's important to kind of pick and choose and blend to create your own sound.
Absolutely, yeah, that's what an artist is.
Right,
yeah.
Because if you're just copying somebody else, that's not the way you want to go about things. You want to create your own sound, your own message, but you also need time to kind of go through that. So
absolutely.
You grew up listening to classic rock, and I want to hit on this trip to Nashville because it seems like it was a really important trip for you. So how did it all come together? What was it like when you first went to Nashville? Because that's the epicenter of country music. So what were your first impressions of it all?
Well, it was eye-opening and really transformative for me because I hadn't grown up listening to country music. So then to discover this whole genre that has 60, 70-year history, you know, starting in the late 30s, early 40s, with the Carter family and Jimmy Rogers and Hank Williams, and then to be able to listen to all that music with fresh ears as a very impressionable late teenager, which is the time in your life where you really start to develop your own identity, like you're talking about, as an artist and as a person. So I went to a show at the Bluebird Cafe, which is a legendary singer-songwriter venue, and I was just awestruck. I didn't realize that there was a genre of music that really spoke to the heart of a singer-songwriter like that. and it's country, and that has such an emphasis placed on musicianship, you know, and the craftsmanship of music. And so I just delved back and became a huge country fan. And then a few years later, I came back to Nashville and worked with Mac McAnally. And that was the first time that I'd ever worked with session players who are the best in the world in Nashville, and a Nashville producer, and saw how they make those records.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Oh yeah, but it's amazing because, you know, they'll sit down and they'll play a song that they've never heard before, and it sounds like a record. And it's just a testament to their musicianship and their craftsmanship consistently over decades of making those kind of records. So it's a whole nother level of of musical acuity. It's amazing.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's really gifted people doing incredible things. It's cool to witness. So you have all this experience, you do the Nashville thing. When do you get to the point where you're like, I want to do this for real and like really go all the way in on it?
Well, I'd already been there. Like, I was a very serious child. I'd already been there like my whole life,
and
I'd gone
to
and I'd gone to performing arts school, and I've been writing songs and demoing songs and recording. But when I was 20, I made a decision to start writing and producing my own records. So I kind of, at the time I was on a more like commercial Nashville track, and I really wanted to like discover my own voice as a producer, as a songwriter, as a, that wasn't necessarily super commercial. And I really wanted to develop myself as an artist. And so I started making records in New York, actually. And I started a school tour, and I ended up touring around schools for a few years, and I ended up performing to almost 200,000 students, and conducting workshops and master classes, and so kind of developed my own sound that way. Like you're talking about, it takes time. And then a few years ago, I met Rick Wake, who's my current co-producer and manager, and that was just the right time. I really hit it off and found a creative partner with him, and we created like a little production team around us, and we recorded what became Bare Feet.
That's
so
cool.
Yeah.
Nice. I feel like with music and with comedy, there can be some parallels, because like the college university scene is kind of where you start everything off. You're getting your reps, you're trying to find yourself. Was there a point along the way, was there a show when you were just like, you know what, I think I'm starting to hit this here. I'm really finding myself, I'm finding my sound?
I can't remember like a specific aha moment like that. I'm sure there were some along the way, but it really is such a journey. And like you know, and then the minute that you think you found yourself, then the next day you're something else. You know, it's kind of, it's like this really beautiful lifelong journey and endeavor that kind of never ends, and you're always evolving. I mean, even now, like I feel like I'm just scratching the surface of what I want to do and who I want to be, and the musician that I want to be. Like I feel like I have so far to go, and I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
You know, that hunger.
We should keep evolving no matter what we're doing, and especially in music, because when you're 19, 20, you're in one point in your life now. At the back end of your 20s into your 30s, that's going to be a whole new chapter of your life.
Oh, absolutely.
And your music will represent that as well.
Yeah, but in terms of the college scene, like at the time there was Mumford & Sons was exploding, and Ed Sheeran was just starting to come up, and these singer-songwriters who are having huge fan bases in that demographic that you're talking about was really inspiring to me.
Definitely. And there's something about singer-songwriters too, whether it's just like the creative freedom that we get to see through your music, or even just the way that you control everything. You know, because like some artists, it's like they get the lyrics, the production's here, and then they're just the front face. But singer-songwriter, it's everything. So why is that an important thing to you when you create your sound and create your music? I'm
just passionate about all those aspects that you mentioned, and I'm so passionate that I wouldn't want to not be involved, you know? Like I really am passionate about production, I'm really passionate about writing, and it wouldn't be compelling to me, it wouldn't be exciting to me if I was just a face or just the singer or just the performer. I wouldn't feel authentic, you know, I wouldn't feel excited. I'm completely, like 100% engaged in everything that I'm doing, and it's a complete representation of my truth in the moment. And to me, there's no point in, like, if you were born with the passion to be an artist, then you got to follow through on that on every vertical, and so that's what I love to do. Absolutely. So you've had the talent, you're putting in the time, and then it seems like some other people in the country music world are like, all right, Caroline's got something on here, let's take her under our wing. So who were some of the people early on that were like, we believe in you, we're going to put you out to a bigger audience? Well, the first person was Zach Brown, who was the first person to take me on tour and offer me a platform and an opening slot, and I learned so much. That was my first major tour in big venues, and I mean, I can't even put into words everything that I learned. You learn how a band and a crew work, how a tour works, how a backstage vibe is set, and like a mission and energy with all these people. What leadership is, you know, you learn how to capture a crowd of 5 or 10 or 20,000 people who are walking in as you're playing, you know, and from Zach, I just learned a seriousness of the craft and a dedication to the craft, and kind of not giving a crap about what other people think of your creativity.
Yeah,
and
that's how you should roll.
Fearless.
Absolutely.
And then Jimmy Buffett was the next person to take me on tour, take me under his wing, and offer me a distribution deal with his label. And he gave my music a huge platform too, and introduced me to so many other headliners like Kenny Chesney, and brought me on tour with the Eagles, which is bucket list.
That must have been
Vince
insane.
Gill, yeah. Oh, it was amazing. I opened for Jimmy and the Eagles at stadiums, so that was amazing. That was last year. And just recently got to collaborate with him and Kenny Chesney on a song that he wrote for me. So I've been really blessed to have great mentors, and great mentors who are artists, you know, who aren't people in suits or just business people telling you what to do, but like real people who have had decades-long careers. And there's a reason that they do, who offer you advice and support.
So what were the largest crowds you played in front of prior to Zach Brown?
Probably a few thousand people, like 5,000 or 6,000 people was the biggest crowd I played in front of on a school tour, like on a big college show or a big high school show. And then it
explodes after that.
Yeah, but it's totally different, you know, in the country world, on a country tour, in an outdoor amphitheater. It's very surreal. I mean, and the only way that you learn how to capture those crowds is by doing it and through experience. No one can teach you. It's not something you can read in a book or in a manual, or someone can tell you how to do it, like, because it's a very in the moment, energetic, visceral thing, and every artist is so different that what works for one person won't work for you because it's not authentic to yourself. So trying to find kind of what your strengths are, what your hook is, how to authentically project yourself as a performer and try to get people's attention and try to capture people's hearts, and it's a real craft unto itself, you know, and I wouldn't have the chance to develop that if it weren't for people who gave me that stage night after night, like not one time, but
not a one-off.
Yeah, because you only do it by experience.
Absolutely, and you hit it. Like visceral is the exact same thing I was thinking about, because even going back to like the 30s and 40s, like you mentioned the Carter family and all these other people, like country music has always had something to say, and it's always been like, we're gonna hold the mirror up and here's what our lives look like, here's what the world looks like. And it must be interesting for you because you're in this unique position where it's like, now I get to share my story and my message. So how cool has it been to share that with a fan base that loves just hearing the honest truth about what the country looks like and what our lives look like?
Well, it's a joy. I mean, I wouldn't want to do it if it weren't on those terms. Like, I wouldn't want to, like I said, if you're going to be an artist, you just got to be an artist on all the verticals.
Right, and not just trying to make hits. Like, you just want your music to say something.
No, I've never been about that. But I think that then connecting with people on your own terms is like the ultimate validation and also the ultimate connection, because the whole point of music is to uplift and inspire people and connect with people, and when you're being your most authentic self, then you will find your audience who connects with that and who can be uplifted through that and inspired through that, and that is so powerful. Like, that is the most powerful thing about music.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we talk about this here, Chasin Me. This is coming out, and where were you at this point in your life, and what was it like putting this EP together?
So we've been putting this EP together over the past like 2 years, ever since Bare Feet came out and we started touring, and so we've gotten to record a lot less because we've been touring so much, so it's been much more sporadic, but one of the advantages has been we've been able to develop arrangements and production and songs with a band on the road, which I'd never done before. Like, I'd never even had a band before, you know? So I think you can hear that energy and that kind of musical maturity more in this music, and I'm just super proud of it. It's just the next kind of step for me as an artist and the next evolution of my sound, and so it has a bunch of new songs. Chasin Me, we've been playing live. A bunch of them we've been playing live for like a year or so. and it has a collaboration with Jimmy Buffett and Kenny Chesney, and then it has a bunch of new songs that aren't out yet. But right now you can pre-order it and get 3 of the tracks.
Nice. Yeah, I was listening to Chasin Me this morning. It's just like a nice, easy listen. You know,
Thank
it's
you
just something
so
you can
much.
really enjoy.
Yeah, it's a romantic song.
Yeah, that too. So where was the inspiration for Chasin Me?
Chasin Me is just a song about kind of the old-fashioned romantic values that I still really believe in, and
even in a
I'm
world
kind of
where
a
it's
sucker
changing.
for. Yeah. I love like all those old like 1950s, 40s and 50s romantic comedies like Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy, and I'm just a hopeless romantic. So that song is kind of about the love that I want and the man that I would want. And the romantic values that I believe in.
I gotcha. And that's kind of hard to embrace in a life where things are changing, but also in a world where you're touring all the time, and you know it's a crazy life. So balancing that romantic love with the career, I'm sure it can be a difficult thing at times.
Yeah, it can be, but everything happens in its good time, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. You're doing your thing now, and that man you're singing about in your song will come up at some point.
Exactly. I'm singing him into existence.
Exactly. We got to speak things into existence. So whoever you are out there, come on, let's make it happen. So you've collabed with a bunch of cool people. Who are some other people that you think to yourself, like, it would be amazing to work with this person?
One of my favorites would be the 1975, just because I love their songwriting and their production is so interesting. Haim, the girl group, they're so awesome. But there's so many. I mean, Keith Urban's one of my favorites. I got to tour with Vince Gill, who would be an incredible collaborator. There's so many.
Those are a good few right there. So you're this old soul, so when you think about where music was when you're growing up, where music is today, what do you like about the industry? What are some things you'd change about the industry? You know, what do you think about it all?
That's a great question. Well, the industry's changed so much, even since I've been alive.
Yeah.
Like, it's changed probably more since I've been alive than it ever changed in the
Spotify,
previous 50 years.
iTunes,
Yeah.
like, you think about all that?
Yeah, and the digital explosion. So I think it's gotten better for artists. I think this is the best time that probably an artist has ever had in the music industry, because we have more opportunities and more options than we've ever had before. Like 40 years ago, there was no other choice than to go have a guy in a suit say, you're talented, sing this song, do this, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, and you didn't have that many options. And it was only like extraordinarily well-rounded, talented people that were able to do more than one thing, you know, like a Stevie Wonder or something like that. So now we have so many other options for creating platforms for our music, through social media, through various forms of digital media, through all these different types of deals that can be structured now. But I think we're still in the very, very early stages. I think it's only going to get better for artists, because I think that the new world is going to serve fans and artists more than kind of all the middlemen who have kind of lost a lot of power in this digital age. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because before artists had a lot less power. So they're starting to have a much bigger platform, and a lot more power, a lot more options and choices, and that will only serve the music and serve their creativity, I think.
I think it's nice that not only, like, it's not just a group of gatekeepers that control everything anymore. You know, it's like, oh, your stuff doesn't have to just be played on this radio station in Nashville.
Yeah,
you can just directly
still find an
release
audience.
it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But it requires a lot more. The artists have a lot more responsibility and a lot more kind of weight on their shoulders if they decide to go the independent route, like I've been going. But it's also infinitely rewarding if you are able to find a fan base.
So when people listen to your music and check out your stuff, what are a couple big thoughts you want people to have about your stuff in terms of the message you're putting out there and just what you're doing with your work?
Well, I think like all music, I just want people to be uplifted and inspired and enjoy it. You know, I want this music to find its audience. So if someone, my whole mission is kind of just for people to hear it, and then the people that resonate with it and love it, I hope that it makes them feel something and makes them feel joy, and you know, because that's what I feel when I create it. So I hope they enjoy the sonic palette and the production and the lyrics and the songwriting, because every single note in these songs, every single word, every single note was lovingly crafted by me and a few of my best friends and people that I most respect and admire. So they can count on that. And then I hope they love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can people check you out next? What's coming up?
Well, I'm touring with Zach Brown Band through September. And then we're taking a little break to release the EP, and then we'll be announcing some fall dates later.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Congrats
Thank you
on everything.
so much. Great
really
questions.
Nice to meet you.
Really good interview.
That's Caroline. I'm DJ. See you next time here on The Sit Down.